Welcome back, dears. Today I'll teach you the eighth lesson in your MCB textbook, Fire, Friend and Foe. So, by hearing the title itself, you might have observed the word friend and foe. Foe means an enemy. How the fire is acting like a friend and an enemy. That is the essence of this lesson, and it does this not like a common English lesson. It is somewhat similar to a science class because here you can see some scientific terms and the scientific uses and the chemical reactions that is happening and all. So now let's go to the lesson in detail. Early man didn't know what fire was, but he must have seen the damage it would cause. He must have watched lightning and volcanoes long before he began to use fire himself. Fire was powerful and dangerous, and he was frightened. In the first paragraph, we can see how the fire has been used by the early man. How they made the fire. We have heard many stories related to this. And they were not so much aware that the fire is that powerful, but they were able to understand that the power and the danger that can be caused due to fire. Fire may have puzzled early men, but now we know that fire is a result of a chemical reaction. When the oxygen in the air combines with carbon and hydrogen in a fuel, a chemical reaction takes place. Energy in the form of heat and light is released in this process. This is what we call fire. So in the second paragraph, we can see the formation of fire, how a fire is created. In the early period, the early men were not aware about the chemical reaction. They were totally puzzled. They were confused regarding the fire. But now we know it is a chemical reaction, and it is a chemical reaction where the oxygen is combining with carbon and hydrogen in a fuel, and this chemical reaction will result in the formation of fire in the form of an energy that is in the form of heat and light. So this chemical process results in heat and light, and this results in fire. Three things are needed to make fire: fuel, oxygen and heat. Wood, coal, cooking gas and petrol are some examples of fuel. Oxygen comes from the air. That is why when you blow on smoldering paper, it often bursts into flame. The third thing needed to make fire is heat. Fuel and oxygen do not make fire by themselves, or else a newspaper or a stick laying in an open would catch fire on its own. To burn a piece of paper or wood, we heat it before it catches fire. In the second paragraph, we came to know that it is a chemical reaction. It is a chemical reaction where the oxygen and the carbon and the hydrogen, they are combining together, and it results in energy, and that energy is released in the form of heat and light. And here in the third paragraph, we can see what are the three things that is necessary to make fire, and they are fuel, oxygen and heat. You should keep in mind we need fuel, oxygen and heat. For making a fire, three things that is needed is fuel, oxygen and heat. And there are some examples of fuel like wood, coal, cooking gas and petrol. These are some examples of fuel, and how this fire is happening when the oxygen just mix up with the elements that are present in the fuel, and these elements will combine together and it will release heat and light, that is ultimately the fire. And we can see when we are burning a paper, when we are burning a newspaper or a stick laying in an open, it will easily catch on the fire because there is a presence of oxygen. To burn a piece of paper or wood, we heat it before it catches fire. So in order to make it lit, what we used to do, we used to heat it. So how we are heating it? We are heating it with the help of a lighted match. Every fuel has a particular temperature at which it begins to burn. This temperature is called the flash point or kindling temperature of the fuel. This is also a very important chemical term, that is the flash point. The flash point is the temperature at which anything that starts to burn, and this flash point is also called as a kindling temperature. Okay, it is different for different fuels. It is sometimes said that fire is a good servant but a bad master. It only means that fire is very useful as long as it kept under control. So here in this paragraph we can say what is the ultimate meaning of this lesson. The title of the lesson is Fire, Friend and Foe. So here we can see how the fire is acting like a good servant and a bad master. Only the time till when it is under control it is a good servant, and if it is out of control it will become like a bad master. For instance, we use it to cook our food, warm our homes in winter and to generate electricity. But on the other hand, if fire gets out of control, it can be very dangerous. Each year, thousands of homes and shops are damaged by fire. Vast areas of forest are also destroyed and hundreds of people are killed or injured. So, in this paragraph, we can see the examples where this fire is acting like a bad master. If the fire is out of control, what will happen? It will be very dangerous and many people will be killed, many things will be destroyed, many people will be injured, and we will lose many things. Just as three things are needed to start a fire, there are three main things on which a fire can be put out. In each one of the three things needed for burning is taken away. So right till now we have studied the things that are needed to lit a fire, and now we can see the three things that are needed to put out the fire. Now we are going to pay attention on the things that are needed to put out the fire. The three things that are needed to put out the fire. For example, we can take away the fuel. If the fire has no fuel to feed on, no burning can take place. We often let a fire die out simply by not adding more fuel to it. So this thing that is evident in a home during the winter times. During the winter times, we will be lighting the fire, and later on, after the place is warm enough, what we used to do, we will never put more fuel into it. We will not be putting the timber or wood into it. So automatically what will happen? The fire will put out. And the second way of putting out a fire is to prevent oxygen from reaching it. No supply of oxygen means no fire. Small fires can be put out or smothered with a damp blanket or a sack. This stops oxygen reaching the burning material. Sometimes carbon dioxide is used to extinguish fire. It does not allow oxygen to reach the burning material. So the first method is that we should stop giving the fuel for the fire. And the second method is just to prevent oxygen from reaching the fuel. So in the beginning itself I have told you oxygen is needed for lighting the fire. For burning something we need the presence of oxygen in the atmosphere. But in order to put out the fire we should prevent the reach of oxygen from the fuel. And for that we can even use a damp blanket or a sack just to prevent the supply of oxygen to the fuel. And sometimes even we can use carbon dioxide to extinguish the fire. And if we are using the carbon dioxide, what will happen? It will not allow oxygen to reach the burning material. You might have seen in buildings, in schools, in some buses and all, the fire extinguisher, it is actually filled with carbon dioxide, which is used for putting out the fire. And now we can see the third way of putting out a fire is to remove the heat. If the temperature can be brought down below the flash point, the fuel stops burning. You blow on a burning matchstick or a candle to put it out. In doing so, you remove the hot air around the flame, bringing down its temperature below the flash point, and the candle goes out. So in the beginning, we have already learned about flash point, means the temperature that is needed to start burning. Every material is having different flash point. Okay, so the third way is that we should reduce the flash point, or we should reduce the heat of that fuel. Okay, so whenever we are just lighting out the candle, a burning candle, what we are actually doing, we are just blowing over it, so that the cool air from our mouth will be reducing the hot air around the candle, so that automatically it will start lighting, it will start putting off. And sometimes water is sprayed on a fire. So this is very common thing. If we really wanted to put out the fire, if it is so dangerous, what we used to do, we used to just pour water over it, so it absorbs heat from the burning fuel and lowers the temperature. So this water is actually used to lower the temperature of that fuel or that atmosphere. The blanket of water also cut off the supply of oxygen, and the fire is extinguished. So the presence of oxygen is also needed for fire. So if you are pouring water over it, what will happen? It will prevent oxygen to reach the fuel. So automatically the fire will be put out. Some fires cannot be put out with water. If water is sprayed onto an oil fire, the oil will float to the top of the water and continue to burn. This can be very dangerous because water can flow quickly, carrying the burning oil with it and spreading the fire. Water should also not be used on fires caused by electrical appliances. The person spraying water might receive an electric shock and be killed. A carbon dioxide extinguisher is the best thing to fight an electrical fire. So right now we studied that water can be used to put out the fire. But now we can see where we are not supposed to use water. Okay, and the two things are, when there is a fire over the oil, we are not supposed to pour water over it, because due to the difference of density, what will happen automatically, if you are pouring water over the burning oil, the oil will float over the water, and the water will be spreading very fastly, so there will be the spread of oil as well, and it will increase the density or the intensity of that fire or that burning. So we are not supposed to pour water over the burning oil, and we are not supposed to pour water over the burning electrical appliances. If due to short circuit or any issues, if there is a burn in any electrical appliances, we are not supposed to pour water over it. And if you are pouring water over it, what will happen? It will create an electrical shock to that person, and it can even harm that person, or ultimately he will be dead. So in order to extinguish the fire in these circumstances, like in electrical appliances and oil, it is always better to use a carbon dioxide extinguisher. Okay, so carbon dioxide extinguisher will prevent the presence of oxygen, and automatically it will result in the putting out of fire. We spend millions of rupees each year in fighting fires, and we spend more trying to find new ways of preventing fires from happening and getting out of control. On the whole, we have learned rather well to control fire and put it to good use in our daily, everyday life. So here we can see the consequences of this fires. Again, we are spending millions of rupees each year to fight for this fire, and nowadays we are getting many new ways to prevent us from fire, and to prevent us from getting out of control. And on the whole, we have learned rather well to control fire and put it to good use in our day-to-day life. Long ago, there were no firemen. When fire broke out, everybody became a firefighter. People form human chains, they still do if required, and pass buckets of water from a well or a pond to the blaze. Now there are laws about building construction which ensure that space is left between buildings to reduce the fire risk. Every new building, especially a public place, must ensure observance of your fire prevention norms. Bands of firefighting workers with special equipments known as fire brigades are there to put out fires. Firefighters are highly trained people. They possess many skills. They cut out electricity supply, knock down dangerous walls, spray water and other materials to bring fire under control. They are also trained in first aid so that they can help people suffering from burns or from the effects of smoke. In the second last paragraph, we can see the role of firefighters or the firemen. And many years before, there were no firemen, and if anything bad happens, if there is a fire breakage, what used to happen, every single person will be a firefighter, and all of a sudden they will make a human chain, and in order to put out this fire, they will be passing buckets of water from the well or a pond to the blaze, to the fire. And nowadays, in this present scenario, we are having laws that ensure that there is enough space between buildings to reduce the fire risk. That is, if something bad happens in one building, it should not affect the other building due to the space. And if they are very congested, what will happen? Easily the other building also will be affected. Every new building, especially a public place, must ensure observance of fire prevention norms. So whenever we are going to any public place, any public buildings, we can see the presence of this fire extinguisher. So if there is a breakage of fire, if something bad happens over there, we can use this fire extinguisher all of a sudden. And we are even having the heroes, the firefighters, and they are specially trained persons, and they are having special equipments, and they are called as a fire brigades, and they are trained to put out fires, and they possess many skills, and they are very fast in doing the actions. They will not wait for the moment. They will do it within a fraction of a second, and they will cut out the electricity supply, knock down dangerous walls, spray water and other materials to bring fire under control. And they also know about the basic needs in first aid, so that if a person is suffering from burns, or if a person is suffocating due to the smoke of that fire, they are able to give them first aid. The discovery of fire and its uses helped early man to cope with nature better and gradually adopt a settled mode of life. Fire is still worshipped in many parts of the world. Fire is indeed a friend, but as we know, it can be a dangerous enemy once it gets out of control. So this is some of the story of this lesson, and here we can see the discovery of fire was the best invention that was done by the early human beings, and it helped them to settle in their life. Otherwise, they were always nomads. The early men were always nomads. But due to the invention of fire, they learned how to settle in their life. They learned the settled mode of life, and even now, fire is worshipped in many parts of the world because it is the best form of energy, and it is a friend as well as an enemy. If it is under control, it is a friend, and if it is out of control, it will be the most dangerous enemy in this world. So I hope you understood this lesson. It is very simple lesson. If you are interested in science, obviously you know about all these things. You might have studied all the elements needed for making a fire. In order to put out a fire, what all things are needed, and you might be knowing about even the flashpoint. So this is all about the lesson, and I hope you understood the lesson. And if you have any doubt, please clarify at the earliest. Thank you.